see here. Looks like there's 2 people. Now, I think the only way possibly for you to see me here on the other browser is for me to have the live stream as live also on YouTube. So I probably do have two windows going. So I think it depends on where you sign in to Astroscoop. If you sign in with your Google account or YouTube, you can sign in and then you can see my channel. If you just find me through the YouTube search, but you're not signed in, the StreamYard is, I'm streaming directly to YouTube. So shouldn't make a difference as long as you can find me. But hopefully we'll wait a few minutes to see if anyone else pops up. How's everyone doing? It is the last week and last weekend of spring, and I'm looking to the west here, and it's not completely dark here. There's still a little twilight here on the East Coast, which is amazing. And we have one more week of gaining light, at least here in this part of the world. We have one more week of gaining light where the days are the longest and the nights are shortest, which is very interesting. And of course, that will culminate next week with the summer solstice. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to finish up Gemini tonight, and then we're going to talk about Gemini-Cancer Cusp, which begins very soon. Today is the 14th. Happy Friday the 13th from yesterday. I didn't have time to do my stream yesterday, although I really did want to do it on Friday the 13th. But Friday the 13th was yesterday. Today is Saturday the 14th. And we have just a few degrees left in Gemini until we get to the Moonchild sign Cancer. But we'll be in the cusp period in just a few days. So today, June 14th, 2025, we're still in the latest part of Gemini, which I talked about last week, Gemini 3, which are people ruled by Mercury and co-ruled by Uranus, the seekers of adventure. So we talked about that, and then we're going to talk about Gemini and Cancer. I've been doing a lot of astrology research lately and looking at a lot of posts from other astrologers around the world, and things are really, really heating up with a lot of these alignments and some of the violence and some of the negative things that are happening around the world. A lot of these astrologers are predicting or have predicted a lot of this energy, a lot of this bad energy, negative energy, unfortunately. But some of these things have been in the works for decades, unfortunately. So there's definitely some things there that are were inevitable that were coming. But the outer planets making these alignments, it's quite amazing because they definitely, these big shifts, when the planets are in a sign for so long, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they're so long in one sign, and that's predominantly one element. It's a huge shift when it goes to the next sign. So it's a couple things. It's the shift of like Saturn going into Aries, and then it's also the shift of when it goes into the new sign of what new aspects it makes in the cosmic sky with the other outer planets. So we're going to talk about that. So can anyone see me here on StreamYard? If people comment, do you see it? Do you see a StreamYard chat box, or do you see me just on the YouTube box? Because here, that's the YouTube I can see. And let me see. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if now I'm doing the last couple weeks, so I'm doing something wrong here or not. I'm a little confused here. Let's see. 'Cause I know you can see me. We have 3 people on YouTube. Um, let's see. You know what? I'm gonna really quick. I was gonna do this later. I want to share tonight's cosmic chart with you all. Let me look at. Whoops. No, it didn't work. Let's try that again. Okay, let me try again. Apologize for the difficulties here. Yeah, that's tricky. I don't know what's going on. This is the problem I had last week with the screen. All right, let me see here. Second. All right. Okay. We lost somebody. No doubt to my delay here. But thank you for coming in here and thank you for being patient. So tonight we're going to talk about a bunch of things, and I was going to do, if you'll recall, any of you that follow me regularly, a while ago, I think it was last fall, I did a Friday the 13th stream, and I mentioned about 13 different facts approximately on Friday the 13th and the numerology of it. So I was going to do the same kind of thing last night, but then since I didn't have time to do that, I didn't want to have to do two different live streams. So I kind of combined a little bit, not too much of the 13 essence, and then we can go into the astrological part. So don't forget to subscribe, sign in to YouTube and subscribe to Astroscoop, and then click all are personalized. You can follow me on X, Astro_Scoop, and I'm also on Instagram, Astroscoop7, and I'm on both of those platforms almost daily. And you'll see a lot of this content on there and vice versa. So please check those out. And for those of you that didn't see my latest video from a couple weeks ago, it's a cusp video, which I believe I did the Aries Taurus cusp and also Taurus Gemini cusp. So I'm going to do more and more cusp. I'm going to do a lot more cusp activity because I get dozens and dozens of comments from people about my cusp videos, and still, even to this day, some of my videos from years ago are still getting watched and still getting comments. So it looks like the cusp videos are of great interest to people. I don't know if that means there's more cusp people or just because it's like the combination of learning about both signs or both, which is really cool. But today's June 14th, 2025, as I mentioned before. Yesterday was the 13th, and obviously there are, in the world, there are countries in the world that see the number 13 as lucky. Obviously, there is a bit of unlucky correlation. There's unlucky correlation with the number 13 or the concept of 13. And that mainly goes back to some battles where there was bloodshed and more. And there were specific people that felt that they were superstitious about 13 and things that happened on or near certain days 13, I believe in the 1700s. So there's a lot there for the 13. And then, but there are also countries that like that like 13 or see it more as neutral kind of thing. But 13 is an interesting number. you know, I a lot of buildings don't have a 13th floor because of that. You know, they'll maybe go 12 and then it goes to 14. I think both hotels and hospitals don't have a 13th floor. I'm pretty sure. Um, and then the 13th degree of certain signs in astrology in the zodiac are a heightened degree and are a very sharp degree, like the cardinal signs, which like Cancer, like a 13-degree Cancer, which would be next month, is a very strong and heightened degree. So it's a very interesting degree if you're a cardinal sign, if you have a cardinal sign planet that's 12, 13, or 14 degrees. But the 13th has everything to do with, with black cats, although black cats are beautiful and amazing. And I think it's a shame that people look at black cats as mysterious or in some kind of negative way. I mean, black cats just represent intuition. All cats do, but especially black cats. It's very, very powerful energy. If you have black cats that spend time with you or are near you, and if you have a black cat that stares at you, I have a black cat, and he's almost 18, and he stares at me and he like looks through my soul. I am not kidding. It's no joke. If you have a black cat that looks at you like that, they're not only connecting with you, they are they're on another level. It's like a telepathic level. It's like feline telepathy, and they're reading your energy. But they only do that with certain people, and so I mean, that loving cat might be loving to a bunch of people, but they're only going to look at you or someone else, whoever they're bonded with that kind of intuitive intensity. So it's black cats are wonderful. Obviously, all black animals are amazing and shouldn't be feared or anything. Norse, Norse mythology, Loki, the myth of Loki, a prankster, had all kinds of happenings and dealings right around the number 13 or on a day of the 13th, and was kind of banned by certain things and caused all sorts of pranks and mischief. So that's another reason. Goes back to Norse mythology as far as 13th and kind of mischief and weird happenings and things like that. In Spain and Greece, the number 13 relates to Mars, which is Martes. So, Mars is war, but it can also mean positive action or positive heroic themes, or heroine themes that are positive. So it's not necessarily all bad if it's Mars. It just depends on how they use it. But a lot of countries see 13, the number 13, in different ways. When I did more research, I thought that was interesting. That it's not as prevalent as you would think of people being superstitious in a negative way about the number 13. And the number 13 in astrology, well, in numerology is one thing, but in astrology, I mentioned the cardinal degrees are a sharp degree at 13, but it's all 13 is close to the midpoint of a full 30-degree sign as well. So that's close, like tonight, the 14th, we're in the middle of the month, but we're in a very late point. It depends on the month when we go through the zodiac cycles, but that's also interesting with the 13. So I was going to talk more about the 13, but there's too much. That was on a different poster, so we're not going to get into that right now. So late Gemini energy, the third decan, ruled by Uranus. You've noticed in the last week too, notice some of the sudden instability in the world. Now, here's one thing. Now, I'm not going to get too weird about conspiracy theories or anything. I have a lot of thoughts on things that are happening in the world. And um, when you, now I'm not saying this about myself, but when you are someone that, and I don't mean just an empath or psychic, but if you're someone that's willing to close your eyes and prepare yourself for the truth, does that make any sense? I think it's easier for people with certain signs in their charts. I'm convinced of this. I don't think it's a male or female thing. I don't think it's an age thing or generational thing. I think uh, there's certain indicators in our charts where we're more willing or more brave to confront things that might be unpleasant, or confront things that may be true but unpleasant. So keep this in mind. Just because something is unpleasant doesn't make it untrue. You know, if there's something you don't want to believe, no matter how strongly you believe, whether it's about a president or a candidate or a country or something, you have to look at things. You have to look at things from a bird's eye view and say, is what I'm seeing real, or is this a play? Is this theater? Because there's a lot of things going on right now in the world where this late Gemini energy of some instability with the planets, especially Uranus, which is closely going to go into Gemini, that is causing a lot of weird things. And there's evidence to so much weird stuff going on right now, and there's still so many people that don't believe any of it. So you can't force people to believe things they don't want to believe, even if you have the evidence. you can't. It's amazing how powerful our own biases are. All of us. Our biases are unbelievably powerful. And a lot of that stems from things in our natal chart. Things that we don't want to see. We want to just see things that are pleasant. We want to just see things that are, but I watched a reel from an astrologer the other day, and she was talking about parenting. She was talking about astrology, and then she was talking about herself as a mom. And she said, you know what? As a mom, she said, I know my chart and I know my kids' charts, so that helps me understand them. She said, but I don't shield my kids from the truth. She said, oh, I know a lot of moms that do shield and protect their children from the youth and lie to them. And she said, I don't do that. Is it harder to parent, and are there more struggles and conflicts? Yes. But she said, ultimately, I want my kids to know that there are things in the world that are not always true. There are lies, there's deception, and that you really need to think critically. You need to think critically and trust your gut. You have to trust your gut. Again, certain things in people's charts. I know the gifts that are in my chart. I also know the struggles that are in my chart. You have gifts in your chart, and you have struggles in your chart. Every natal chart has those fundamental strengths and weaknesses. But I'm at a point in my life where I want the truth. I don't want to be told what I think is the truth, or what I want to hear is the truth, or what fits me as being comfortable is the truth. It would be nice to just know the truth, and no matter how uncomfortable that is. And that's a hard pill for a lot of people in this world to swallow right now. The truth that's happening with all the relationships with all these countries. Some of these things are false flags. Some of these things are not real. Some of this is theater. Some of it is just like a TV movie set. And I know a lot of people won't believe that, but there are a lot of things there's a lot of evidence that shows that. But I digress. But this is how all these astrological energies play out in the world, and it's very interesting of how this late degree of Uranus in Taurus, which I see all those astrologers, especially in the UK and Canada, talking about this, about the last degree, the later degrees of Uranus and Taurus, which we talked about, Algol, We talked about that weeks ago. And that sudden, Uranus is so sudden. And if it hits, if Uranus gets anywhere near Mars, war, anywhere near Saturn, which is lessons and potential punishment, rigidity, structures, it's always going to stir things up. And then it's hitting these certain points in these countries' charts. That's what a lot of people, astrologers, are doing right now. I haven't really been doing that lately, but they're looking at the midheaven and the midpoints, and how a lot of the charts and the leaders of these countries are having returns with their personal planets or angles hitting their Mars, which is interesting. It's very interesting. It's almost like everything is unfolding as like a script, kind of thing. But the late Gemini energy here is it is a wild card. It's absolutely a wild card. And as we go into summer next week, the Gemini-Cancer Cusp it runs from June 19th to 24th or 25th, depending on the degrees. And that's comprises very late Gemini, and then early Moonchild people, early Cancer, combining the two. But the summer is the summer solstice, obviously, in a week, is very heightened energy. It's very heightened. And it's interesting that the sign of Cancer is what initiates, at least here, initiates the season. And Cancer is all about feelings. Now, feelings are wonderful. We all have them, but feelings right there. But we look at all the problems with people in the world, countries of the world, operating and off of their feelings, and all of these negative feelings, and not having a grip, not having a grip, so to speak. So some of these things go back, problems for decades, and some things are kind of bubbling, new bubbles with some of these alignments. But if you know anyone born between June 19th to the 24th or 25th, so that's in about 5-6 days, will be in the last couple degrees of Gemini, but those folks are Gemini-Cancer Cusp. So they combine Mercury. So again, it's coming off the Gemini 3, which we're in right now. It's coming off a Uranus and Mercury influence, which is kind of a wild card, and coming into late Gemini into the early Cancer, which is raw early Cancer energy, which is the moon. And this cusp has the twins, obviously, and the crab, or kind of any kind of crawling sea creature, is kind of related to Cancer and related to the moon. The ebb and flow, the tides, and the sea creatures. But the Gemini and Cancer together next week, you'll feel a different shift. Now, what's going to happen too is the collective you. So the collective you, is going from this airy Gemini, late airy Gemini, which is the most fleshed out version of the sign, into early Cancer, which is going to start to get into I feel, into those feelings. So the sometimes unstable or unhinged nature of Gemini coming into the hypersensitive shell of Cancer, of the crab. So that can create, you have air and water, or have air and water. You have thoughts and feelings coming together, feelings and thoughts coming together. So anytime there's air and water, this is the air-water cusp is always a battle of head versus heart. And every sign has an inclination. The essence of every sign has an inclination more towards head, or maybe more towards heart, more towards feelings. But of course, we're all a mix, because we don't only have just our sun sign in our chart. We all have our moon, and we have our Venus, which is love, and our Mars, our energy, our rising. We have so much. We have so much going on in the chart. That's why, that's another reason too. You know, when you get to know, if you meet someone new that you date, or you meet someone new that you're friends with, or that you work with, or you collaborate with in a club or something. That's why you don't always see people's true colors. It's not necessarily that they're hiding it from you. They could be, but our charts are so, just like ourselves, are so layered. The onions have so many layers. Our charts are so layered that if so, you're seeing me right now present this Astroscoop. But if you were in the room with me right now and I was giving you one-on-one reading, you might say, "Oh, he's a lot different." Whether that's positive or negative, I don't know. But you might say he's a lot different in person. There's a different energy. So there's different things in our charts that come off, you know, depending on the environment. And that's what's so fascinating about astrology. And with cusp people, you have the two signs battling simultaneously. So that's why cusp people are more complicated. And this is going to be a complicated time for the world in this next week, because of this cusp period of feelings and thoughts, and coming into Cancer, and the patriotic nature of Cancer, and the protective nature of Cancer, sort of thing. So there's a lot to talk about with Cancer. So what's kind of happening is the world stage, Gemini is going to start to kind of take a bow, and Gemini's going to start. Gemini's been on stage here, all this Gemini going on with Jupiter, the Sun, Uranus, and now then Gemini's going to go kind of behind the scenes, backstage, and kind of still there, but viewing things. And then we're going to start to absorb a lot of Cancer energy. And before I get to the celebs, I wanted to mention, born on June 24th is Kurt Smith, who's one half. He's the bassist and singer of Tears for Fears, the British group that sang Shout, Head Over Heels, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. They're actually back together touring. They're in doing small concerts in Las Vegas, I believe. They're doing a residency in Las Vegas. I wish I could go. But I mentioned Kurt Smith because he puts in the Tears for Fears music, he puts so much of the heart and the feelings and thoughts into the music, because his partner Roland, who also is co-founder and sings, is very different. So the two of them together really make such unbelievably beautiful music. They're kind of like my Lennon and McCartney. Tears for Fears is that's how much I like them. They're right up there with my favorites. But they're kind of like that Lennon and McCartney, of putting those two together. And then Roland, the other guy, he's also a cusp person, which I'll mention him in August. So keep that in mind. But I just wanted to mention Kurt Smith, because if you get a chance to listen to Tears for Fears, they're on the radio a lot. They're also streaming a lot on satellite radio and on the internet. Their music's just beautiful pop, just beautiful pop music, but that has elements of other genres. So the feelings and thoughts. This is what Gemini-Cancer Cusp people are all about, from the 19th to the 24th or 25th. So if you know anybody born, I have a couple people in my family that are born that week. And it's interesting because the early Cancer person, so let's say next week, you know someone that's born the 21st or 22nd. That's just barely Cancer. So early, raw, total cusp. It's going to still have some Gemini traits. They're strong Gemini traits. But then when you get to June 24th or 25th, like Kurt Smith, you're getting into probably 4, almost 5 degrees of Cancer. Just barely, still makes the cusp. Not a strong Gemini influence, possibly a little bit, unless there's other planets in Gemini. And then you're going to be looking at pure moon, just pure moon energy for influence. But Gemini Cancer people, how do they differ from the Geminis this week? What if someone is June 19th or June 20th and they're born right before the solstice, right? On that year, they're born right before the summer solstice, maybe hours before in the hospital, or let's say the solstice was in the middle of the night and they were born maybe 10 p.m. the night, the evening before, just a few hours. So they're going to be very late Gemini. So that Gemini energy is not pure. It's not raw and pure. It's very, very late. And it's so close to Cancer that person would demonstrate, depending on what environment you see them in, would demonstrate more Cancer or more Gemini traits. But remember, they're only one. They would definitely be only one sign. If they were born at 10 p.m. that night and it was still Gemini, they're Gemini. But let's say the solstice was 3 a.m., 5 hours later, they would be 0 of Cancer, but they would still have a little hint of Gemini. So I know I'm a broken record. I'm sorry. I know I always repeat that every season and every year about the cusps, but I constantly get comments from people that need clarification for that. And there's no right or wrong way to look at the cusp energy. If you're July 20th on the solstice, but you feel more like a Gemini, you're tuning more into the Gemini energy than Cancer. Most people, I would say 90% of people that I've met or read for on this cusp will say to me that they feel like a Cancer. Cancer to me, the Cancer, especially for women, the Cancer energy is so emotionally strong and specific, where the Gemini is more unpredictable. Gemini is more, it's more airy. It's more non-distinct. It's more neutral. But the Cancer side is so particularly emotional that when you're a person that has a cusp with Cancer or any planet in Cancer, or Cancer risings especially, I've known a lot of Cancer rising people. Woo! That is a tough, Cancer rising is tough. And I either get along with them or clash. There's no in between with me and Cancer rising. I don't know what it is. It's either really chill and cool or it's nope, it's a no-go. So I don't know. But it could be if it lands, the degrees that land in my 8th house, that could have something to do with it. But that Cancer energy for a man or a woman on this cusp doesn't matter. Male or female does not matter. And it's very pointed. That Cancer energy is very pointed about how I feel. So I don't think there's not a lot of confusion when people are on this cusp when they say, oh, I feel like a Cancer. You really know what that means. I don't get a lot of people saying, oh, I feel like a Gemini. But they might say, I'm a Cancer, but you know what? I can be a little unpredictable and a little flaky sometimes, and I am kind of more restless than my mom, who's a true Cancer or something. That we'll talk about true Cancer next week. So that kind of thing. So that combination. But people on this cusp, the way I can equate it is people on this cusp have a certain certain magic or spark about them. And Gemini is a sign of spark, right? Gemini is like sparkling personality, some kind of sparkle in their energy. But when you combine Gemini and Cancer, it's like, this is an amazing time of year, especially next week when the summer solstice starts. With the smells, and everything is so lush and really, really thick now. And the animals and everything is just full bloom. With Cancer, it is absolutely full bloom with the fertility of the earth and the kind of the earth goddess energy. So the Gemini-Cancer cusp starts that on the solstice, starts that energy, and then it really culminates and peaks about 5 or 6 days in, and then you're in true Cancer, and then we're moving on, and you'll feel that, especially if you're someone, especially if you have a chart that has strong water signs, any water signs. It doesn't have to be Cancer. A Pisces or Scorpio, you'll feel that strong shift to the Cancer energy around, let's see, probably around the 26th or 27th of June, as we get closer to July 4th and get closer to that new moon in Cancer. You'll really feel that. If you don't have water in your chart, major water, it doesn't mean you won't feel it, but you may not be as sensitive, or you may not be as interested in wanting to feel that or see that kind of thing. So Gemini-Cancer cusp, that's coming. And again, it's interesting every season how you can see every season or so, or maybe every 4 or 5 months, we have these shifts of elemental shifts of we have these groupings of certain elements that are very strong, and you see how much changes in the world when these elements change, when the sway of elements. That's why when you meet people in person, or you spend more time with people, and they kind of change on you, or that you see different sides of them, you're starting to see. It's like when we were all young, and you go on a date with somebody. Okay, the first date, sometimes it's great, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to go on a second date with this person. Sometimes it's okay, and you go, oh, all right, let's just see what happens. Then the second date is better, and you're like, oh, okay. Oh, third date, even better. Oh, great. Okay, we got a vibe here, and you're starting to see other elements in that person's chart. That's what I think. You're starting to see those other sides, those other elements that are coming out in different, in different environments, sort of thing. And I'm very sensitive to the moon personally. The moon signs, which every 2 to 2.5 days change, I notice my energy level, my interest in certain things. Some moon days, I just feel like taking like a big nap at 4 or 5 o'clock. I want to take a nap or something. I don't know. So we're all sensitive in different ways, and I can feel that. Last week we had a moon in Scorpio. Tonight we have a moon in Aquarius. Boy, so different. Interesting. And of course, it's where it lands in your chart as well. It can influence that energy and that environment for yourself. But feelings and thoughts, and these people are magical. And these are the type of people that would like Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter, or Twilight, any of those series that have, or movies that have this element of enchantment and magic, maybe a little bit of dark magic, a little occult, a little fairies, sparkle, glitter. That's how I see the summer solstice people. That's how I see Gemini-Cancer people. They can be really, really charming and sweet. And they're very, very thoughtful people. And this is what's interesting I've seen about them. They're very, very thoughtful and caring as we move into being a full Cancer person. But they're also selfish. And their selfishness is kind of subtle. It's not obvious like an Aries selfishness, or a Leo. It's not obvious. It's not too hard with a fire sign to see a little bit of the selfishness. But with a Gemini-Cancer person, it's more subtle, and there's a little selfishness with their needs being met, especially emotional needs, or wanting attention in a certain way. But they're not always willing to give. They're not always willing to give the attention that they want, because they're private. They're very private people. And I know I say this every time, but cusp people are complex and tend to be more private. Definitely value privacy with the two signs. Even if it's a cusp where a sign is more, more yang or extroverted. But the Gemini-Cancer cusp, definitely, there's this kind of they love, but not at the expense of they're kind of they're shrewd. They know when to kind of be cool and then when to use their heart. So they're not all heart, but they're not all head either, if that makes any sense. They're kind of head in heart, and they kind of know when to use it. So knowing when to use it could kind of implicate that they could be manipulative. They can be. They could use their charm, their quiet charm or thoughts to kind of get their way. I mean, any sign can do that. We all do it to some extent in our lives. We all manipulate, even if it's in the tiniest ways, just to survive. It doesn't mean we're actually actively harming others or taking advantage of others. Hopefully not. But every sign has some degree of manipulation. Maybe I'll do a video on that, on how each sign manipulates their environment or something, or how we shift things. Maybe shift things more to our advantage. But Gemini Cancer is very thoughtful, and if you can give them space to be in their ivory tower, this is a cusp combination that they like. They're not necessarily, they're more of a spectator. They're not necessarily on the field. They're not Harry Potter playing in the game, like flying around on a broomstick. That's not, they might like it and they might spectate, but they wouldn't necessarily participate in that. So they like to be a little more protected in their ivory tower. This might be someone that lives, in an secluded island, or on the beach somewhere in a house where there's no neighbors around. That kind of person, or someone in the woods. That would be a Gemini Cancer person to me, that would value that privacy and that space, or more of being emotional space, I think, but a little bit of that air sign, space, the air signs need. But Gemini Cancer people are very interesting, very thoughtful, and they can be incredibly helpful as well. And sometimes they don't ask before they try to help people. And this is more so the Cancer part, which I'll talk more about Cancer. But anywhere there's Cancer in the chart, there is a quiet push. Don't underestimate Cancer. Never underestimate Cancer in any way, because I'm not saying that they're going to snap on you, but Cancer is a strong, quiet push of a sign. I mean, think of the crab energy, the Mother Earth Goddess energy, starting off and commencing something as powerful as the solstice, which is next week. I mean, I'm getting chills. That's amazing. That is amazing. So the chills are telling me that we have some loved ones that are with us. Definitely, I'm feeling it. Do you feel it? You ladies feel it? Because they're here. I'm not sure who it is, but yep. Yeah, that's great. But just talking about that solstice energy, you can feel the chill, and that's how. But it's going to warm up. I'm not talking about the literal chill, because it was chilly today on the East Coast, which is having that 50s wind chill and that 60-degree temperature. I'm talking about a chill of the power of Mother Nature. What's more powerful than a solstice, right? That's amazing. So I can't wait for next week's energy. And it would be wise for everyone to do some yoga, even if you do it in your chair. Yoga, meditation, anything. Just get quiet. Anything to tune into that Cancer energy. Because remember, you have Cancer somewhere in your chart, even if you don't have a planet in Cancer. But feelings and thoughts are going to rule next week. And that means there's a little less intuition and less sensation or groundedness with Earth. So that's something we'll have to talk about in a few minutes. That's something we got to talk about with, these countries and all this stuff happening in the world, where we just need more. We need more grounding, kind of thing. So this cusp and this sign combo equals three zodiac cycles. And if we're looking at 12 signs living 84 years, 12 times 7, approximately 84 years in a life, we're looking at someone here that's like maybe in college or just getting out of college and breaking into, like the summer solstice, commencing this kind of new magical energy of their life, like a 20, 21, or 22-year-old person would, coming out of college, either deciding to go back to graduate school or starting their life with a career or something major other than this life of school that they've had their whole lives, this structure and this bubble of school. It's coming out and using, trying to develop what it is that they feel about themselves and what they want out of life. So that would be kind of equal to someone around 20 or 21. And then the essence is this nurturing, because of the Cancer. Not that Geminis can't be nurturing, but this combo is nurturing versus stagnating. And that's a big theme for people on this cusp. And I've seen people on this cusp, I would not use the term lazy. Again, lazy, we've talked about that. Lazy is different for everybody. Lazy can also be intrinsically connected to ADHD and ADD. I follow a lot of ADD experts and ADHD because it's fascinating to me. Neurodivergent people, and the connections are very interesting. So someone could be, in their mind, could be an incredibly vigorous, hard worker and creative, and yet if they can't get started on a task, or they can't flesh it out and have the parts and pieces to know what to do for the next 2 days or week, whatever it is, the time period, that they can't even start it. But it's not because they're lazy, and it's not because they're not motivated. So when I see the Cancer Gemini, I see these people as that head versus heart struggle, where they want to participate with their feelings and love, and they're really affectionate people, and they want a lot of affection from people. But again, they want space. So they don't want you to really invade too close into their world, but yet they want you there. But yet maybe they don't that much. They want to love. They're full of love. But again, they can be cool. They can be cool customers when it serves them. So they can kind of turn it on and off like a valve. So a Cancer Gemini person has to be aware of that you're not playing with someone, toying with someone in terms of, hot and cold kind of thing. Now, that is a danger for all the air signs. You've heard that from other astrologers. The air signs can run hot and cold in relationships, but you have to look at a lot more than just like one air sign placement. That's not fair to say Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are just all cold and aloof. Come on. Have we all known someone that had an air sign planet that was cold? Sure. But you also knew someone that was cold that had some other kind of placement that you might be biased towards. That is a totally different element. That might be fire. That might be earth. That might be water. So again, it's where people are in their involvement. But the nurturing part is very strong, but they can also stagnate. And they can be a little indecisive. Not so much it's not like a Libra indecisiveness, but they can be a little unsure, a little insecure, having this restless air energy about thinking, about overthinking, and then this Cancer energy, which is cautious. It's pushing, and it's a little aggressive underneath, but it's still cautious. So you can see those struggles there. Head and heart, cautious, kind of aggressive. I want my needs, I want love, I want affection, but I don't want to be like, don't come into my ivory tower. Don't just come unannounced, kind of thing. So the introvert and the extrovert on this cusp it's a flip, depending on the person. This person could be, I would say they'd be an introvert in one environment and an extrovert in another. I know one older woman who's born on this cusp, and she says to me, I'm so shy. She said to me, I'm so introverted a while ago. And I said, you are? She said, oh, yeah. She said, it's really hard for me to like schmooze and mingle with people and to, try to connect with people. She goes, but I love people. And I said, you're not an introvert. And she said, no, I am. And I said, but you have done things with your church and you have organized community things through your church and events to such a level. And you've worked with so many different people of different ages, genders, and ethnicities that you've brought together for a common theme. I said, you've talked to this person who's 20, you've talked to someone over here that's 50, and then you're working with women that are, 60 and 70, and you've put all that together. So if you were able to talk to all those people, you're not a true introvert. And she was like, oh, I guess I have a little extrovert in me. So it's interesting that she doesn't see herself like that, but she was able to, with her thoughtfulness, her heart that she put into her community activities, can connect with people. So the Gemini Cancer person might be on the quiet side, but that does not mean they're a total introvert. They can definitely, they have a social bent, and they can get into, get their way, and um, they can get people to do their bidding. That's a good way to put it. They can influence people in a way like that, and that's a good combination. That's a positive combination of the Gemini and the Cancer. Maybe bringing out the best in, if you're working with a bunch of people for a project, bringing out the best in. This person's great at setup. This person's great with cooking. This person, sorts of things. This person's great with the social media page. We'll have that person do that, and that's Gemini Cancer people are very good at that. But they have to really be careful of that stagnation, that stagnating, and they can get themselves just kind of stuck in that they're kind of comfortable, and they're comfortable in their zone and their privacy and their ivory tower sort of thing. So they have to work at putting themselves out there a little bit more. That would be good for Gemini Cancer people. Is put yourself out a little bit more, like just a little bit beyond your comfort zone would be a good lesson. So they can be very objective, which they have a lot of good qualities that they can bring to work, jobs. Like I said, the community involvement or volunteering things. They could be really good for that. Really objective, but they're also have the tendency to isolate themselves when they're stressed, or if they feel like people are going to ask too much of them. They can isolate themselves, and that's kind of the Cancer part. But it's the combination and moving towards the moon, kind of the moon energy. Obviously, Pisces can be like that too, especially a Pisces cusp, which we've talked about. But objective versus isolated. So there's definitely a lot of conflicting kind of energies for them to try to reconcile. So there's a star that incorporates this word called Propus, and fixed star in the constellation, and it's a foot star, which is interesting. Now, Gemini is the nervous system and the hands, but now when we go into Cancer next week, we're going to be dealing with the breasts and the digestive system or stomach. That is all the domain of Cancer and the moon. So it'll be interesting to see. How, as a collective nation, how we digest all of this, all these happenings that are happening with other countries, and how we're going to, in a way, digest some of this food. Because when we're in Cancer, it's a whole different animal, so to speak, than when we're in Gemini, and there's more thoughts ruling. When we get into the feelings and feelings of the stomach. So Propus is a foot star, which is kind of interesting. So let's look at really quick. Let me see if I can share my screen. I know this didn't work last week. I'm not sure why it's not working, but I will try again. All right, let me see. We'll talk a little bit about the transits. Let's see. All right. That's working. All right, let me try a different way. Let's see, bear with me.